then I get the enviable job of talking about earning Bitcoin. So this is where we're focused on at Stakwork and Sphinx. So not to get too philosophical, but really if you think about it, we have time, and our right, and I think the most basic and fundamental human right, is converting that time into value. And so we hear about that a lot, but we try to just go to the absolute core and say, how do we give the most people the opportunity to turn their time and talent into the best value, which is Bitcoin. So our job is to take fiat money from companies in the United States, and then they give us their work and their money. We break it up into little pieces, and we send it around the world and pay people Bitcoin over the Lightning Network. We could not do this without people like Elizabeth Stark. She got us started. She tweeted out, we had, I think, 3,000 signups within an hour. So crazy. Very cool. So we've paid out millions of microtasks. So we're talking 2 cents, 3 cents, 4 cents. And people sit on their phone, and we have like a security guard in the Philippines who says, hey, I just sit here all day watching people walk by. I make twice as much money on Stakwork than I do from my security guard job. That's the kind of thing that we love. So we started with 2 or 3 cents a task. So then where do you take this from there? So we, with the help of AI and a great team, are taking this and applying it to higher level knowledge work. So knowledge work, what's very valuable is programming. So programming and design work. So bounties, that was an amazing segue from Jack. I don't have any announcements like that to kick things off. But bounties have typically been viewed like, hey, here's $50,000, here's $10,000 to do this big project. Our version of bounties, and we can't think of a better word for it, but are more like $40 or $50. So can you do 2 hours of work, do $30 to $50 worth of, in US dollars, we pay in Lightning. And so very little counterparty risk. You're just doing a couple hours worth of work. You're getting a task done, and you're getting paid. So that just reset in your brain. Our version of bounties are like micro bounties. So, okay. So to me, getting the Lightning Network enables us to tap into a global workforce. So coming from Silicon Valley, what's the biggest thing? You're paying huge dollars to Google developers. They're making $500,000 a year, eating free sushi. That's one version of developing code, right? So what we're trying to say is, with the age of AI and this code generation, developers have really have these kind of superpowers now to generate new code. So the lives of your average coder is evolving, some people more than others, but one statistic is around half of all code committed to GitHub is generated by these AI models. That's a year and a half in, 2 years in. That's crazy. That blew me away. And they're saying, and I think this is about true, about 75 to 80% of all lines of code in the next couple of years will be generated by these models. And I'm not talking about cashew and experimental stuff where it's never been done before. But if you look around and you're a coder, you know that a lot of what you write is boilerplate. So is that really good use of their time? So we're going to redraw how development, so the individual developer has really changed how they develop, but the organizations haven't really changed. So we're really focused on how does an organization use these new tools to redraw how you develop software. So individuals have the benefit. Now we're trying to help the organization have the benefit. So you really do have to rethink how you develop code. So you've heard of, if you're in coding, way back it used to be called waterfall, then they made fun of that. Now it's agile, and now they made fun of that. We created something we call the Hive development process. And so what this really does is say, you have internally, in the very inner circle, you have these technical product managers that know what you want to accomplish. But then if you actually break up the work into small pieces, exactly like what we do with Stakwork, then you can actually assign those pieces out to a broader set of developers. So you don't have to have full-time employees necessarily to do all of your coding work. So what's an example of that? I should have hit there. So this just briefly describes what we do. We're going to actually publish a website that shows how we do this right now. But we instead, when we do a feature, one person will design the feature. 25 or 30 people we don't know get paid over Lightning to actually write the lines of code. It's crazy. So, and the product managers love it because we have, shout out to Tom out there, he will post up a bounty. By the time he is done writing the ticket for the bounty, so you create the GitHub ticket that has the assignment, then you want to create the pricing, that's the bounty itself. In between, he'll have 5 people asking to do that bounty, about 60 to 90 seconds. It's wild. And so in one morning, he can actually get 20 things done without having to go to someone internally. He's just posting these things up to the ether. People do the work, they get paid Lightning, it's done. It's incredibly efficient. So actually, the process of making the bounties is more work than sometimes doing the bounties. So I'll just give you an example here without getting too much into the weeds. There's something you'll probably hear about in the future, which is everyone knows ChatGPT, large language models. So we're actually using, at Stakwork, large language models and knowledge graphs in combination to do some pretty cool things. So I'll just show an example of that, and it'll end up in a bunch of bounties, just to cut to the punchline. So you can just paste in a GitHub URL, and then Stakwork kicks off a workflow that loops through every single file in your GitHub repository. It reads every function, every import line, pulls out every variable, every contributor. Basically, it's just nerding out on your code. Then, instead of showing it in a file format, we use knowledge graphs to actually show the logical relationship between that code. It's actually the way I think. I used to code Perl, but it's the way I think about code, which is not files and directories, but actually what talks to each other. You refer to a function, you call things. If you use VS Code, it's very much the way VS Code lets you navigate code. So we go in, we create all these relationships, and then you actually are having the language model read every line of code, writing descriptions about what that code does. One of the benefits is you could say this code is a test of this other code. So that turns that light green. Yellow means you don't have a test for your code. I've never met a coding organization that has absolutely 100% test code coverage. This will automatically ferret out those kinds of holes in your code. Now, what is that hole in your code? That's an opportunity to pay someone Bitcoin for a bounty. So then we create the bounties. Actually, before we do that, I skipped this step. We actually feed the code an example test to a language model, and then our workflows go through it, and it generates the first draft of the test code. So you're not even writing it from scratch. You're starting with something that's basically 70 to 80% done. Then you create the bounty. It just pastes that first draft, and you ask the human bounty hunter, hey, we just need, here's the code over here. Here's the test code that was generated by the language model. Can you review this and make sure it makes sense? Then you do a final review from your product manager. Now you have committed code. It's tested. You're not going into technical debt, and you live happily ever after. This whole thing can take 2 or 3 hours and cost $30 or $40. And we eating our own dog food, as they say in software, we went from 20% code coverage to 90, 95% test code coverage in a matter of weeks, and you don't stop your internal developers from doing it. And if you ask any developer, do you want to write test code or do you want to do new features, they will say, hey, let's do new features. So this should be a universally liked program. If we are successful in deploying this out to people, this could result in thousands of bounties. And those thousands of bounties could be first developer projects for developers all around the world. They can go from a hobbyist to a paid programmer, and then they're basically turning their time into Bitcoin. And so that is what we're looking to do. If you're interested in this, we're actually hiring for this project. So we're looking for a technical product manager, and we'd love to hear from you. So appreciate it.